Hello and welcome to our next podcast that we were supposed to conduct yesterday, but then again, certain things came up and we were not able to conduct it. We were not able to record it the day it was supposed to be. But then again, yeah, this Sunday we're recording it. I hope that it will reach to the audience in this week itself. Uh, I was caught up with many things. My guest was also visiting a doctor, so we couldn't conduct it this post day. I have with me today Dr. Soumya Avasthi. She's a freelance analyst. She has worked with Tony Blair Institute for Global Change and Vivekananda International Foundation. Apart from that, she has also been worked with MP, IDSA, uh, a wonderful analyst, and also has been part of many writings that speak uh, about the work she has been doing. She has also authored many papers. Largely, she is looking at the security aspect of South Asia. And today we'll be going to discuss about the emerging developments and key trends in South Asia when it comes to technology and terror. I would like to extend my welcome note to Dr. Avasthi for being part of this podcast. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Miraj, for having me on your show, and it's an honor to be here and reach out to the larger audience through your channel. And once again, my apologies for not being able to join you yesterday, but I hope that today's presence make up for all the loss, and I'm able to give good response to your tough questions.
No, no. Normally, I would like to put a word here because they are not tough questions, basically, per se. But I try to understand from the author's perspective how they have been doing, how they have been writing, how do they navigate all through the literature they are producing.
Yeah.
And short of anything, I mean, it's delightful always to have guests like you on a podcast to at least get a glimpse of how they have been approaching different scenarios in a geopolitical changing world. So yeah, I mean, last time I have had a podcast with a student from international relations, who's also a podcast anyways, but that podcast will come up anytime in this week as well. I was awfully busy with having sort of interest in national politics, and then elections came up. I was trying to read and understand the different developments. That's how it is. Apart from that, when you say tough questions, I say they are just the questions of a student of international relations. So it's always wonderful to have authors like you with us in order to understand things from the analytical perspective. That's why I reckon that your participation will add a value to my podcast series. So I'll start with this thing that you have been looking into the security aspect of South Asia largely, and in specific terms, we'll say you have produced works on radicalization. Apart from that, also you have been writing on issues like technology and terror. So draw us a larger picture of how do you, as an author, as an analyst, look at different things.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this question. And yeah, so when you say that I've been a scholar and writing extensively on subjects like terrorism and radicalization, counter narratives, what my observations have been for last several years now, and with advancement of technology and the digital evolution that the country and the world is going through, we see that this has not been unkept or secret anymore, and it has gone to the larger audience in this world, and it has both goods and bads and pros and cons, or all sort of people are using technology to advance their skills, advance their knowledge, advance their objectives and goals as well. So likewise, in the same breath, how can we say that terrorism is not affected by it or is influenced by it? So in last few years, my observation has been that terrorism has become tech driven, and it's not entirely based on the old school conventional methods. Terrorism is using digital world like any other platform, and also like any other institution is using. So we see there is a lot of technological advancements that have happened in terms of their communication methods, their recruitment methods. So these are some of my observations when I see how the transition has taken place in the world of terrorism.
The countries that inhabit this landmass called South Asia,
Yeah.
there is a greater demand for the digital density. I mean, we have had 4G networks, now we have transformed to 5G, and obviously uh, this has also bringing up challenge like even the non-state actors can use a medium like technology to actually shape the, because of the social media usage, that especially in countries like India and other countries that are in the region. How do you see both the things going, like the development? South Asia needs a development trajectory when it comes to the population and the challenge. It also has to cater to climate change. It also has to cater to different issues that stem out of national or international politics. So how do you see this technology and the development trajectory going the day we are basically talking about it?
I will restrict myself to this whole discussion on terrorism and technology, and give a better understanding that when you talk about advancement that India or South Asia or the world or the regional groupings are uh, achieving, it has it is like a double-edged sword. So basically there are both sort of consumers in this world, and when there is a technological advancement, of course the agencies are able to handle better their threats and counter those challenges which they were not able to do earlier because lack of technical skills and technical facilities. So for example, when we talk about terrorist acts in the past, we did not have the satellite imagery system, for example, but now we have three-dimension satellite imagery. Also we have people who can trace the perpetrators of act of terror sitting in one room, and the person can be present in any part of the world, and they are caught easily or they are nabbed. So this technology has definitely helped us encountering those challenges, but at the same time it has also allowed the terrorist groups and organizations to exercise similar kind of advances or advantages, that they are able to move further and challenge us in a bigger way. So even before we have the solution, they are able to act smart, and it's something like a cat and mouse race. We are trying to catch them, and by the time we reach to that stage, we find that there is a new development in technology, and they have advanced on to the next level. So this kind of a situation exists, but we do have solutions in place. There are people who are constantly working on it, and the technical industry or the experts on subject matter are collaborating together with the government and coming up with solutions on how to counter the challenges. And for example, for terrorist organization, it has become very easy to do remote radicalization and remote recruitment. But this is again being countered by our security agencies through various tools in place, and also advancing, getting better trained by the experts from the industry. So there is a, if you say there is a threat, there is also a solution in place, but this is like a very different act of balancing, where sometimes one side is more powerful than the other. So this continues to happen in this region as in any other part of the world. And yeah, so there are these developments happening.
And when we talk about the challenge that are being posed by the synchronization of and synergy of technology and terrorism, we also have to talk about the strategies that governments are actually putting in place in order to track the developments, track the movement, track the plans and strategies of the non-state actors. Do you come across any of the strategies like that? How are we actually catering to this challenge of technology and terrorism?
Yeah, so like I said, that there is a uh, constant, cro- you can say, path correction that takes place, and people are learning with time and technology. So there are a lot of surveillance systems which have come in place, use of drones, use of public monitoring areas. Even at the borders, there are a lot of infrared scanners and CCTV cameras are being used. Big data analytics is taking place, which is helping the government analyze the data, and use of artificial intelligence to um, skim through the huge number of amount of data that we get from social media, and then go through each one of them through the use of technology again, and find anomalies and rectify those things. Similarly, there are biometrical identification, like I said, that some countries are adopting these methods at the border, where they can use biometrics to identify people who are using fake identities to enter into any country. So there are a lot of things that, similarly, at the airport, people are using these methods. And there are many more cybersecurity measures that have come in place, especially uh, given the government's network and infrastructure projects, where like the high security infrastructure projects are there. They have adapted to the cybersecurity measures. Um, there are a lot of counterterrorism apps which have come up. Community engagement is taking place. So government is constantly trying new methods and using uh, technology to advance their objective of countering terrorism. Government of US has come up with with an app or a feature called Mamex, which helps them control the uh, control the access of people who are migrating with illegal identities. So they are able to uh, catch hold of these people with fake identities at the border. So government of India is trying to implement similar things and are testing them at their borders, and coming out with solutions related to that. So it's an evolving field, and we see a lot of apps being come up, and especially in the cryptocurrency case, you will see that government has hired ethical hackers. Let's say there are hackers who are working in collaboration with the agencies to find out all those illegal transactions that are taking place from the platforms like Tor and Onion Router, basically. And yeah, so before a bigger damage is done, they are able to control the damage. Of course, there is a damage that is there, but there is some kind of reduction in those damages.
When you talk about the influence and the challenge posed by the penetration of the social media in every village, in every house, we have seen in elections, we have seen apart from that also the rumors, the speculations, also the fake news industry. uh, how do you view it? Because it's to my understanding a very important tool, either to manufacture an opinion or to spread a fake news. Apart from that, the good things that it has brought up with it, like the connectivity, connecting through the digital mediums in order for the research, for studies. Apart from that, it also has been throwing a lot of challenge. How do you evaluate all these developments?
So, yeah, information warfare or narratives and propaganda is part of this whole system, the ecosystem that exists on misusing of it. There are deep fakes which are coming up, and so when you talk about it from the common man's perspective, firstly, as a viewer on social media, firstly, our aim should be not to take it by the face value, and also see, keep yourself abreast with the latest on how these technologies are being used to set negative agendas, or fake identities are being used or deep fakes are being used to uh, propagate a negative narrative against the government or the agency, or in general against any community per se. So these challenges do exist, and at same time terrorist organizations are using these methods to recruit and mobilize a lot of people. And for example, if you see the ISIS magazine, which comes out, they have been talking and discussing a lot about cryptocurrency, use of dark web, how to use dark web to create biological weapons. And government in any part of the world is constantly keeping a check on it and giving out counter narratives on it. So when when ISIS, let's say, targets India and talks about our domestic political issues related to communities, or tries to bring in divide. So there are also same time at the same time people from the same community rising up and standing and telling the member of these communities to not buy the argument so easily if it is against one religion or the other, but both, they are using the platforms, they are getting the support from the government to clarify the doubts and settle the propaganda and not let it fume further. So there are these kinds of challenges which do exist. Social media is a big um, challenge. It's a tool which is being used by both terrorist organizations as well as by common man. So let's say India has tied up with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and other platforms of or other social media apps to keep a constant check. And there are these bots which are trained to identify those negative remarks against any person or community or the organization, and then it before it gets hit in the social platform and people start reading it, it is immediately taken down. So these kinds of practices are in place for last 5 6 years or maybe more, where such things are, before even it reaches the masses, is taken down.
Dr. Soumya, if we talk about the other side of the spectrum, certain people do. I mean, some people do believe that there is a thin line between surveillance and the privacy sort of a thing. Uh, I mean, as a society, as a country, are we up to the challenge? Are we up, braced up completely and up to the mark where we can navigate all through this thin line, and people who have been always coming up with op-eds, with analysis, with research papers that surveillance and privacy does have a very thin line, and it's so anonymous at times that security agencies, or for that matter, the security grid that we have put in place, they do face a lot of challenge where dividing this line.
Yeah, so I believe you're asking me about the ethical dilemmas that exist in.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
that's my point.
Yeah. So yes, definitely there is a lot of ethical dilemma uh, in the minds of people who are dealing with counterterrorism, and especially with advancement of technology and mass data collection that takes place, it does become a challenge, and there are a lot of privacy concerns. And to counter those privacy concerns, also government is taking all steps, or the agencies, people with the authority are taking steps. But before, like, what can be those ethical challenges or dilemma? Of course, one which comes to everybody's mind is the privacy concern, because sometimes in the step towards countering the terrorism or countering uh, propaganda, radicalization, or whatever which is against the national security or national interest, there is always a risk of indiscriminate surveillance which happens. There is intrusion into individuals' lives and potential for abuse and misuse. So there are a lot of frameworks that government has come up with, and they are. ensuring that the social media agencies or the offices of those apps, for example, in India, when Facebook is getting access to everybody's private data, there are certain frameworks that they have to follow and abide by those laws, because it is in view with keeping it in view of individuals' privacy. And so, for example, in India we have these legislative frameworks, and that is why we have a thing called Aadhaar Act in 2016, I think, which is basically to regulate the collection of data and use of biometric data. Uh, and similarly, if we talk about other countries in the South Asian region, Sri Lanka has a Personal Data Protection Act, which I think they implemented in 2019. So these acts are in place to ensure that the agencies which have authority are only using them, and at the same time they also do not have full access to the privacy, or to the data of the individual. So that's why you see when there are these Aadhaar cards that you download, you see only the first four digits and you don't see the rest of the digits, because either they are blurred or they are crossed. So there are these are the small steps which are taken, and people should also be conscious while giving out their details, that how much to share, because sometimes we are not even aware of our rights and we are not aware of uh, how to go about it, and that's where also we end up exposing ourselves to wrong people and to wrong institutions. And that is why these legislative frameworks are there. The big discussion that's going on is about Data Privacy Act in India, and we hope that in with this incoming government we see some developments in this sector, and more stringent laws are in place, because as we talk about ethical dilemma and privacy of personal data, nowadays a lot of phone generated scams are happening. People are projecting to be from let's say a courier service, and they are saying that in your name this courier was caught at the airport which was going to Taiwan, and it has counterfeit currencies and illegal drugs and things like that. So they will trap the caller so smartly that you start giving out more information on yourself. And there is the trick: you have to be very conscious and very confident in dealing with them, and aware yourself, make yourself and your family aware of how to handle your privacy and handle your data, because for government, they are dealing with large number of huge amount of data, whereas we are to responsible for our own data. So there is as much as the responsibility of the government to ensure privacy of the data, it is our own responsibility as well.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. I mean, the way you dealt with many of the things that I have been bringing up. One more thing is that how do you, as an analyst, quantify the road ahead for both, security and terrorism, that the challenge it has been throwing up, and the surveillance mechanisms? How do you say, for example, down the line of 10 years or 5 years, how do you quantify the challenge that are being posed by this terrorism and technology?
So, like even now, we are at it, and I think in the beginning of this conversation I said that no matter how much we try, there is always a breakthrough in technology, and the problem never ends. So अगर हमने कोई solution निकाला भी है तो उसके आगे की problem भी तुरंत तैयार हो जाती है. So one cannot say that okay, we have found the solution and this is it, we have to sit back and relax now. I think it is the responsibility of any nation to continuously work on their solutions and come abreast themselves with the latest in the technology world. For example, we need to have counter narratives in place. Digital literacy program is something which is very important for me. I personally feel that our nation personally, in especially in India, I see that when you go to rural areas, the digital literacy doesn't exist, and that is why a farmer is getting scammed, and thousands of their money and saving is getting lost because somebody is doing cyber fraud with them. And maybe somewhere his mistake was that he used his credit card or ATM loosely or carelessly in some ATM machine. So there is a lot of program, a lot of effort has to be made on data literacy, digital literacy, for the nation, especially for the rural areas and also for the youth. I feel digital literacy program is not meant only for cyber frauds, but also a lot of youth is getting swayed into, out of curiosity, entering into the dark web and dark net, and they are not able to judge. Their faculties are not so trained to judge what is right for them and what is wrong for them, and in exuberance they go deeper and deeper into it, and uh, gets swarmed with a lot of propaganda material. So it starts from school for me. I personally want that this digital literacy program must start from school, and it should continuously be there. Of course, government must collaborate with the government, with the tech agencies or companies, and not work in silos, because many times working in silos is a bigger challenge than working in team, because government doesn't have technological know-how all the time, and the private sector has it. So there has to be a collaboration in these two branches of counter terrorism field to come together and work. And of course, legal and regulatory measures are very important. I feel that as much as we are able to reform our legal system, we will be able to find better solutions to the existing problem. Of course, there is lack of investment in terms of finances by the government. More and more funds should be raised, and a lot of research R&D should be done on how to counter the challenge. Another important factor that I feel personally is that we should not shy away from uh, involving international agencies, because many times uh, in the haste of feeling ashamed of exposing ourselves internationally about our problems, we end up creating more problems. So more and more international collaboration must happen so that there is exchange of good practices. So there are high profile technologies which other countries have, such as US and Canada and Thailand. They have been collaborating with each other and others among other states, and having success towards taking down many of these threats. So more and more collaboration must happen, and we should also prioritize at skill development and training the people in the agency on how to deal with these threats.
Uh, Thank you so much, Dr. Swamya, for being so much lucid and quite explanatory way of approaching how this terror and technology have to be evaluated and analyzed properly. It will be unfair if we do not talk about your collaboration with doctors, with Sahana Ahmed for the Beer and Bones. Tell us more about it. She'll otherwise feel upset.
Yeah, so Bare Bones Publishing is run by Mrs. Sahana Ahmed, and she approached me to come on board for writing this book for children. Basically, Sahana deals with writing book for children through her publishing house, and her objective, and I think it's a very honest um, effort that she's making towards educating the young minds on how this world functions, what is this world made of, and why it is important for them to know. And the sooner the better, it's like that. So to have experts in the future we must start training them at the very nascent stage. So through this book project, our aim is to help young children, young mind understand the functioning of the world through various international organizations, and also understand what basically geopolitics means, why we need foreign policy, why some countries are closer to each other than the others, and what are national interests, what are international interests. So there are a lot of variables and drivers in this in coexisting of this in this world. So through this book we want to educate people, educate our young readers on basically geopolitics, foreign policy, wars, why wars take place, and who gains out of these wars. So we want to educate them in an unbiased way, because when you talk to human, there is always a level of biasness in them. But books are the most honest platforms. Of course, they are also written by human, but then that's the responsibility of an author to remain unbiased. And through this effort, we are trying to have an unbiased information for our young readers.
Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. I wish you all the best for your collaboration with Sahana Ahmed, and also apart from that, your work. We would love to have you again on the podcast once you come up with something new, and also we'll be tracking this series of terror and technology in South Asia, because it will help our audience, especially the students and young scholars,
Yeah.
who do want to have a different perspective about this topic. All the best, and thank you for coming up to this podcast.
Thank you so much, Mehraj, for having me, and it was pleasure, because as much as this technology is new for everybody, so is it. It's for me. So through this platform, even I got some time to explore for answers, and I'm writing something on technology and terrorism. So I will be happy to share it with your audience, and it will be shared soon with you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and I will be expecting eagerly for the publication.
My pleasure. Thank you.